Welcome to a new episode of B&B Movie Reviews. This week, we interact with the elements, try not to let Jennifer Lawrence hurt our feelings, take a trip to Asteroid City, and reflect on our past lives. Stay right there. B&B is up next.
How'd you do that?
It's the minerals. Check this out.
Awesome! Wow. Watch this!
Ember and Wade show off what their elements are capable of in this sweet and endearing film from Pixar, Elemental. Bryan.
Yes, Brad.
Pixar, always an event when one of their films comes out.
It's supposed to be an event. Doesn't feel like it's been that way lately.
Is that their fault or is that the pandemic's fault?
Yeah, I think that's just, just being the product of what happens with the pandemic, and they have to send a lot of their movies to streaming. And I think families and audiences have gotten used to some of these movies coming out on streaming services.
But that's not really Elemental's problem, right?
No, it's not.
We need to talk about this film. And how did it work for you?
And this movie actually did work for me. I like the idea. I mean, it's kind of heavy-handed, it's kind of on the nose that this is really telling a story about race and race relations, and it's an immigrant story, seeing the differences between the elements in Elemental City. So it does feel a bit on the nose, but even with that being said, I do think that it tells a very sweet story between Ember and Wade, who one is fire, one is water, and seeing them kind of come together and just kind of show their differences, but also kind of understand their differences as well. And I think a lot of that stuff ultimately worked for me in the movie.
The audience I saw it with was primarily adults.
Okay.
I would really be curious to know what a younger person would think of this film, because I felt like the metaphor is so broad and basic and, to use your phrase, on the nose, that didn't quite connect with me, or I didn't find it particularly intriguing. Yeah. But I could see it working on somebody who is, new to these concepts.
I think it's interesting, though, because it does kind of work in broad strokes, because I think it wants to kind of relate to a wider audience. And I think it works on that level. I think the thing that really I responded to was more so the immigrant story with Ember, and specifically with her dad, and seeing that story and knowing that that's a story for a lot of people in this country, being like, the first immigrants over here in America, seeing that story play out with her and her dad, and the pressures of her, feeling like she needs to take over the store that he built from the ground up, but knowing that she has other interests, she has other goals and ambitions that she wants to do, and that those pressures of her wanting to try to please her father, but also do her own thing.
I can appreciate that, but I feel like the metaphor isn't. It's not, the metaphor is not as sharp as I think that story needed,
or that it wants to be.
Well, it's hard to say what what it wants to be, but I just to me, I ultimately found the visuals and the ideas so basic that it never really engaged any kind of excitement. And I thought the connection between Wade and Amber was what you see in the trailer, and there wasn't anything beyond that. I just felt like that you get the metaphor, And you get these characters, and then they don't really do anything beyond it. Like, I don't feel like this film stretches itself.
You know, Pixar is known for, you know, trying to tug at your heartstrings.
Yeah, and they're great manipulators.
Yes, they really are. And this movie goes for that. And it may not work for a lot of people, but I think that last scene, and specifically that last shot, with some characters, I don't want to give too much away, but I thought that was that really did work for me.
All right, well, I'm happy to hear that. I think that I am in this camp where I need Pixar to do a little bit more than repeat its manipulations.
Yeah,
you watch this film and you can't help but think of better Pixar movies that achieve a lot of what this film is trying to do in more unique ways.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot better from Pixar in the past, so hopefully they kind of get back to form. What's your rating for this one?
Honestly, it didn't work for me. I think, you know, if you need a family film and you need to get out of the house this summer, Elemental will work for you, but I would recommend Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse instead for those same people.
If we're going through those routes, of course, Spider-Man, I'm taking that all day. But yeah, I think it's a B+ for me, middle of the road. So yeah, those are our thoughts on Elemental. So when we return, we are going to take a look at Jennifer Lawrence's latest film, No Hard Feelings. Stay right there.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
For college, date our 19-year-old son this summer. We're looking for an attractive, kind, and intelligent woman, early to mid-20s. In exchange, we'll give you a Buick Regal, clean, rust-free 40K miles. Date is in quotes.
You're actually considering this?
I've had a one-night stand before and gotten 0 Buick Regals for it.
I had sex once because I didn't want to commute in the morning.
I've had sex with a guy once to get out of playing Settlers of Catan.
I had sex with a guy once on a first date because I thought he was going to kill me.
Jesus. Get with me now, babe.
She's talking about you, dumbass.
When her car gets repossessed, Jennifer Lawrence considers answering a Craigslist ad to date a 19-year-old for a Buick Regal in the raunchy comedy No Hard Feelings. All right, Brad, so No Hard Feelings, Jennifer Lawrence, she's kind of like, you know, doing something a little bit different. I don't think we've really seen her do before.
I mean, we know that she can do comedy, you know, like she's a hilarious performer.
Yes.
And when you see her, you know, on the red carpet or in interviews, like she can command the conversation, and she likes, you know, she likes putting some jabs out there with those interviewers. And I feel like that side of her comes out in No Hard Feelings.
Yeah, it feels like, you know, the things like you say, the things like, it seems like she kind of has a knack for like comedy, but she's never really had the opportunity to do like one of these kind of just like, you know, raunchy comedies like this.
We don't get raunchy comedies like this too often.
We don't.
And it was sort of just a shock that this film exists at all in the multiplexes right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was necessarily craving a film like this, but it is updated to 2023. I think Jennifer Lawrence herself being positioned as the central figure in this story makes it different than a lot of the films that we would have seen in the, you know, mid to late 90s. And she kills it. She kills it.
She does. I mean, from the opening scene, she's going all in this role. The thing about this movie, though, it feels like the way it was being marketed and sold as like kind of like a raunchy sex comedy, but you get that maybe like the first act or like the first half of this movie, and then it kind of switches and it kind of loses that aspect of it and becomes more of a drama.
I mean, I would say it is more drama than comedy.
Yeah.
And I did chuckle throughout this film, but I never really like belly laughed.
Same.
But I also didn't mind that because I was so engaged with the characters.
Yeah.
I will say that there is a sequence in this film that I will not spoil, but you will know what sequence it is when you are watching it. That is wild, and I never would have anticipated Jennifer Lawrence being a part of a sequence like this. And my jaw was on the floor.
You're talking
when
about-
it was
okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yeah, my jaw was on the floor when that was going on. And she serves as producer, so,
Yeah.
she's in it to win it with this movie.
Yeah.
And she delivers a scene that you could not see in any other movie.
And that's the interesting thing about it. It's like they want to play up her sex appeal, but also because she's so brash,
Undercutting it all at the same
Yes.
time. And that scene,
yes,
I'm trying not to spoil it, but if you told somebody what that scene is, they'd be like, "Oh, really?
Exactly.
Oh, I gotta see this."
Yeah.
But then you watch that scene, you're like, "No, it's not that." Oh, it's like, oh.
it's like, wait,
And I loved that curveball.
Yes.
And I wish that the show had more curveballs like that. That comes on pretty early.
It does.
And we lose that sort of shock appeal. And again, I don't necessarily want a raunchy thing. I'm not talking like
No.
shock appeal as a raunchy thing.
Yeah.
But the way that subverts expectations of how that scene would have been
played out like
a decade ago or 2 decades ago.
Exactly.
I wanted more of that. I wanted more of that kind of reinvention.
Yeah, and that's something I wanted to see more too, was like that subversion of our expectations of what we expect in this type of genre from, an actress like Jennifer Lawrence doing that. And you're right, we don't get much of that. What did you think of like her story, like basically her motivations for what she's doing to try to get the viewer, or the whole thing with the house?
Yeah, I mean, it's a gentrification story, really.
They're dealing with that.
The Montauk story.
Yeah.
And I think motivation-wise, it made enough sense, and they kind of eke out the information about her past and her history with her family slowly, and I appreciated that. I also thought that they did a great job of supplying the backstory of Andrew Barth Feldman's character and what he went through in high school. And they keep it in the shadows for a long time.
Yeah.
And even when they reveal it, it's not like this revelation, but you understand.
You have a better understanding
why he is the way that he is based on that backstory.
Exactly, because when you first meet his character, he does feel very like socially awkward,
but like a cartoonish level.
Yes, especially that scene in the bar.
Right, and it kind of breaks reality. You're like, but I think it reclaims that reality as it goes.
Because you start to peel back the layers of his character and why he is the way he is, and understanding his parents' point of view of wanting to try to get him out there before he goes off to college.
And I thought that was one of the clever things about the film too, is it takes these helicopter parents and doesn't necessarily villainize them. I think it treats them with a lot of humanity, and I at times could see where they're coming from, even if they are coming from a really gross and privileged place.
Yeah.
But I thought the performance, Matthew Broderick as Laird, the dad.
Yes.
I know that guy. And it worked. I think it worked.
It's funny, we're talking about this movie and I'm talking highly about it, but overall, I remember watching this movie. You're right, it doesn't have those laugh out loud moments that I was looking for, that I was expecting from the film. And then it just was kind of a little bit of a shock seeing how it drastically changes in the second or in the third act. Even though, like, thinking about it in retrospect, I do kind of like some of those aspects of, the relationship between those two main characters and how they start to form a bond and form a friendship.
I think this is the type of film where years from now, you're going to remember sequences and you're going to love those sequences, the Jennifer Lawrence scene that I will not spoil, and then the man-eater piano sequence.
That was a great scene.
You're going to remember those moments very fondly.
Yes.
You're not going to think about the whole picture.
Yeah.
The whole picture is okay. Like, this is not a film that you put in your top 10 of the year. No. This is not a film that, you're going to celebrate its milestones. But it's a film when it comes on TV, you're going to tune in, watch your favorite segments, and then you'll bounce out.
Yeah, and I think for that reason, I'm going to give it a high B-. It didn't work for me overall, but like you say, those two scenes, there are scenes and moments I really enjoyed. So I'm going to go B-. What's your rating for this?
Well, I think this is where we differentiate philosophically, because to me, those sequences are so good that it makes the whole experience worth it. And I'm glad I went to see it in the theater. You know, we're the B&B show. B- means we didn't like it. B+ means we liked it and thought it was worth it. I say it's a B+.
Okay, you're right.
Oh,
high B-. High B-.
Okay, sure.
So those are our thoughts on No Hard Feelings. When we return, we take a look at Wes Anderson's latest film, Asteroid City. Stay right there.
Today's cancer research is tomorrow's victory. A victory that is there for the taking. Grab it.
Now that was a great halftime speech. Let's go win.
Don't give up. Don't ever give up.
You took a picture of me.
Uh-huh.
Why?
I'm a photographer.
You didn't ask permission.
I never ask permission.
Why not?
Because I work in trenches, battlefields, and combat zones.
Really?
Uh-huh.
You mean you're a war photographer?
Mostly. Sometimes I cover sporting events. My name is Augie Steenbeck.
Mm-hmm.
Augie Steenbeck introduces himself to Hollywood actress Midge Campbell in the quirky new comedy from Wes Anderson, Asteroid City. Bryan.
Yes.
I know that you have a little bit of a rocky relationship with Wes Anderson's films.
A little bit.
Where did you fall with Asteroid City?
Asteroid City, I'm kind of straight down the middle with this one. Not that high for me on this. Wes Anderson has always been an acquired taste for some. I think people who love Wes Anderson love his movies. Up to a degree. I mean, they could see some of the faults in his films, but they're a fan of his style. They're a fan of his dialogue.
You're talking about me, Bryan.
I know. I know. But for me, yeah, it's an acquired taste. And there are some movies of his that I really do enjoy. The Royal Tenenbaums, The Fantastic Mr. Fox. I do enjoy Moonrise Kingdom, Grand Budapest Hotel is a lot of fun. Those are some, but overall, his filmography, it's just been hard for me to really connect to his style. Now, I love his style, like his visual style, his aesthetic style, the way he uses symmetry, like that storybook look that he has for his films. I mean, he's an auteur. I mean, you know a Wes Anderson film when you see it. But for this movie, for whatever reason, I don't know my entryway into trying to connect with these characters.
I'm not surprised by these words. It is the most Wes Anderson movie. In a lot of ways, it might be the ultimate Wes Anderson film. Okay. And what you don't get from the trailers of Asteroid City is the many levels of narrative that are going on. You see Augie Steenbeck, you see Midge Campbell, you see all the stuff in color, and you're like, that's the narrative. But that's actually not the narrative. The story is the Playhouse 90-bit. The movie opens in black and white. You zoom in on Bryan Cranston doing his best Rod Serling, and they are taking a play and they are televising it live. And what you're watching in Asteroid City is actors playing these characters from a play on TV for the first time, but it's the actors who originated the characters on the stage. So you've got what they did on the stage, which we never see. We get the television production behind the scenes of that play.
Yes.
And then we get the content of that play, which is Asteroid City, which is what we saw in the clip. And I'm watching this film, and I'm enjoying it. I'm like, oh, this is kind of funky. And I get to a point where I realize there are moments where the television show is invading and infecting the play, the narrative itself.
The narrative
and
that
so
we're
you're watching
seeing.
Midge Campbell, you're watching Augie Steenbeck, but you're actually watching the actors playing those characters. And what's going on in the actors' lives is seeping into their performances. And you have to do a rewatch of this movie. You've got to watch this 2 times to watch the secret story that's playing out in tiny little movements and dialogue slips while you're watching the story of Midge Campbell and Augie Steenbeck.
I'm hearing what you're saying. And it's interesting, and I think on a rewatch, understanding that information and going back and possibly seeing, especially the performances between Jason Schwartzman and Scarlett Johansson, and understanding that might play a little bit differently. I don't know. It's just.
Well, I think the movie is cold in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know, the narrative of Augie and Midge. These are two people that are broken, and they have disconnected from their emotions, and they flat out stated at one point in the film.
Yeah.
And so what you're watching are two people who are flat and can't connect to their children, can't connect to the outside world, but then they can connect to each other because they recognize that disconnection that they both had.
That they both had.
So when you're playing with distance, emotional distance, it can be hard to engage with their plight. I feel like Wes Anderson is having a lot of fun with the structure of this movie. He's being a little devilish. And you either go like, oh, you root on that devil, or you back away.
What's your rating for this?
I freaking loved Asteroid City. Like, the moment I realized how these layers were playing with each other and in conversation with each other, like my entire attention had to like elevate. I had to like really concentrate while watching this movie. And sometimes that's not fun, but I had a blast watching it.
I'm going to have to go. I mean, you gave me some things to think about, so I definitely will reconsider that. But as of right now, because of my relationship with the film and my just connection to that, I had to go B-. So those are our thoughts on Asteroid City. When we return, we take a look at the directorial debut from Celine Song, Past Lives. Stay right there.
If you need to do something to feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive. Don't drive buzzed.
He was just this kid in my head for such a long time. And then he was just this image on my laptop. And now he is a physical person. It's really intense, but I don't think that that's attraction. I think I just missed him a lot. I think I miss Soul.
Did he miss you?
I think he missed the 12-year-old crybaby he knew a long time ago.
You were a crybaby?
Yeah. Most of the time, he'd have to just stand there and watch me.
When is he leaving again?
Nora talks with her husband, Arthur, about her meetup with a childhood crush that conjures up old feelings for Nora and some insecurities for Arthur in Celine Song's directorial debut, Past Lives. Brad, Past Lives. So this is a movie coming out of Sundance that a lot of people were talking about. So it was definitely on my radar when A24 picked this one up. So, I mean, quietly, this was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. So I was looking forward to this movie. And for me, it did not disappoint.
Yeah, agreed. I think Past Lives is fantastic. I think right out the gate, Past Lives, one of the best films of the year.
Easily.
Celine Song as a directorial debut, like hitting on every level.
Dude, I'm telling you, like watching this movie, like I came out of the theater saying this movie is beautifully directed. I mean, just the nuance and the care and the subtlety of not just the performances, but the way that she composes shots, the way she lingers on shots. It is astonishing that this is her first film.
There is so much energy within the frame. It's shot on film.
Yeah.
And I was reading an interview that Celine Song did with David Chen on the Decoding TV newsletter that he does. Highly recommend it. You should all subscribe. And she was saying that shooting on film creates an urgency for everyone on set. Because it's not just hitting record on a digital file and they can waste all this time. When you shoot on film, that is money burning through the camera. So every actor has to engage, every grip has to engage, every person in the crew has to be on point when you're shooting on film. And that is such a great defense for keeping film alive, because you see that energy in this movie. And I was, you said astonished. I'm going to use astonished as well.
It's amazing. And then actually just getting to the story of Nora, and then the way this story is kind of told from childhood when she's in Korea and her relationship with Hae-sung.
Well, it does this brilliant thing. Like the opening sequence is them at the bar, which is actually towards the end of the movie. And you're hearing people at the bar try to figure out, well, what's the deal with these three people? We've all done that, right?
They're people watching.
We've always been in a restaurant. We've looked at like a table across from us and you go like,
trying to figure out this story.
Something funky going on. And then the camera pushes in on that funky thing. And it's the relationship between these three people. And then it flashes back 24 years to see her in Korea, and then the jump that it has 12 years later. And this is the most challenging sequence in the whole film. It's mostly shot through Skype.
Through computer screens. But they build that relationship between Hae-sung and Nora so beautifully that you really feel, and it's never said because, and when I think she asks him to come visit her in New York, and he's not able to do it. And he's like, it's not like they're in a relationship, but you know that there is a connection between these two characters. And the interesting thing is like when she meets Arthur, it's easy. It's so easy to villainize Arthur.
The moment Arthur is introduced, you're like, oh no.
But that's the beautiful thing about it. It's like you get connected to their story as well because you're invested, and that was my concern with Nora and Hae-sung. You spend so much time in the first and second act building that relationship that when Arthur is introduced, you're like, I don't want to see this. I want to see them. And then like you start to see Arthur and her together, and you're like, I like this relationship too. So it puts you in that position that Nora is in.
And then when there's the reunion, it feels like an invader on Arthur and her relationship. And so at multiple points you're on your team changes, right? Like who you're rooting for changes.
And then the last couple scenes, the last 20 minutes.
When we return to the bar, and we get to see that conversation now from their perspective. And then the way the camera shoots that three-way.
Man, and then the conversation that Nora and Hae-sung are having in Korean just to themselves.
But the way that the frame then pushes Arthur out. And so you're fully aware that off screen, just to the left, is Arthur, the greatest third wheel of all time. And they're so engaged with each other, speaking in Korean. And it's so painful, but beautiful and sad. And that scene is just three people or two people talking with a third wheel there. It's some of the most thrilling scripting I've seen, some of the most thrilling cinematography I've seen, and the most thrilling acting I've seen all year.
It's amazing how a movie could be so heartwarming and so heartbreaking at the same time. It's amazing.
And it is not safe at any time. And it leaves you with questions, but questions that you can answer for yourself after you noodle a little while on it. Like it doesn't leave you out to dry.
What's your rating for this?
One of the best films of the year, B+.
Same, B+. One of the best movies this year, easily. So, those are our thoughts on Past Lives. So to give you a recap of what we discussed today, we go back to Elemental. We split on that. Brad gave that a B-. I gave that a B+. No hard feelings. We split on that. Brad gave that a B+. plus. I gave that a high B minus.
Let's go to B plus, Bryan.
Then Asteroid City, we split again. Brad gives that a B plus, but I give that a B minus with the possibility of a rewatch. And we both are very high. We finally agree on Past Lives, one of the best movies of the year. We give that a B plus. So, thank you for joining us on this latest episode of B&B Movie Reviews. Come be a part of the conversation. If you have questions, suggestions, feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies. So.